We're talking about human patterns, patterns that have been around for a century and still show up in the way we chase success, build relationships, and show up for our lives. We walk through a mirror that shows how these age-old patterns still echo in our daily lives. Pride, greed, lust, envy, wrath, gluttony, and sloth. They're not just sins as they're called. They're stories we tell ourselves. Stories that either hold us hostage or wake us up. Hey there, welcome to the Shattered Mindset Podcast, wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. I'm your host, Melvin Larry. And I've been thinking a lot about patterns, those internal habits and hidden drivers that shape how we show up in life. And one phrase that kept coming to mind was the deadly sins, the seven deadly sins. You've probably heard of it. Now, don't let that scare you off. This isn't a sermon, but let's talk about it. The idea of the seven deadly sins goes all the way back to early Christian teachings, specifically around the 4th century. A monk named Evagrius Ponticus first outlined 8 evil thoughts, which were later adapted by Pope Gregory I in the 6th century into the list of 7 we know today. Well, they weren't just rules, they were reflections of human nature, patterns that left unchecked could lead to a life out of balance. And for centuries, these ideas have been passed down, not just in churches, but in books, films, philosophy, even business leadership. But here's the twist. What if we didn't just look at the sin? What if we looked at the opposite virtue that could redirect us? Because at the end of the day, we're all fighting something, but we're also all capable of choosing something better. Let's start with first one, which is pride, which really tries to prove versus, humility. Pride tries to prove, humility keeps learning. Pride is that part of us that feels like we have to know everything, be everything, and prove everything. It whispers, I've got this. I already know. It says, asking for help makes me look weak. So I don't really want to do that, okay? But humility, well, humility is strength under control. It says, I'm still learning. I don't have to have it all, the answers, just the willingness to grow. A true fact is pride almost cost me opportunities early in my business journey. Look, I didn't want to ask certain questions because I didn't want to look unqualified. But guess what? Not asking kept me uninformed. And staying uninformed kept me stuck for a while, all right? So look, let's look at greed, all right? It clings and clutches, like a balled up fist, right? While on the other hand, generosity opens its hand. You can't even give anything or receive anything with a closed fist. Nothing can get in or out if you have a closed fist. Now, don't think that this is just about money. Greed is the mindset that says there's not enough. If I give anything, I'll lose something. If they win, I lose. Greed just clutches, all right? But generosity releases. Generosity says there's enough for both of us. It shares wisdom. It mentors. It gives without tracking the scoreboard. It doesn't gatekeep on information. In fact, some of the most generous people I know are also the most fulfilled because they know who they are and they don't mind passing the baton. Look, then there's lust. Ooh, lust wants the feeling. But love, on the other hand, honors the journey. Let's talk about lust a little bit. Beyond just physical attraction, lust is about craving without commitment. wanting the outcome without respecting the process. It's the shortcut mindset. Lust says, I want it now. Love says it's worth building it over time. This shows up in business too. People want success, but don't want systems. They say, hey, listen, if you're at the top, I want to start at the top where you are. Okay. That just doesn't work that way. They want results, but they want to skip the reps. Okay. Love honors the journey. It's patient. It's intentional. It stays when the hype wears off. Okay. Now, how about envy? All right. Let's talk about that one. Envy, the one that sees the spotlight and loves it to bask in it as well, versus kindness that applauds from the crowd or even the background. Envy is sneaky. You can be doing well and still feel it creep in when you see someone else rise. You scroll, you see the vacation, the house, the recognition, and a little voice inside says, why not me? Okay, look, I can remember this when I was living in an apartment, a small apartment, and I was financially struggling and I was wanting to buy a home, but I didn't, see my way financially being able to do that. And I would just be driving around places and I'd look at these little homes in areas that I probably wouldn't even want to move to. And I would say to myself, at least they got a home. I don't. Isn't that a terrible thing? I mean, it's like places I probably wouldn't even want to be at, you know. At least they got a home. Okay. But here's the truth. Envy actually shrinks your capacity while kindness expands it. Kindness says, good for you. I'm clapping for you. And I believe my moment is coming too. I've learned to celebrate others as if it's my own win because celebration creates space for elevation. Okay, now let's talk about gluttony, the craving for more without a real compass, while moderation moves with meaning. Now, gluttony isn't just about food, it's about excess, too much of anything that dulls your focus and distracts you from what matters. Too much spending, too much scrolling, too much saying yes when your plate's already full. It whispers, if some is good, more must be better. But that's a trap because more isn't always meaningful. Moderation, on the other hand, isn't about settling, it's about strategy. It's knowing the power of restraint in a world obsessed with consumption. It's the one who knows about and understands delayed gratification. Moderation doesn't say, stop dreaming. No, no, no. It says, let's build something sustainable. Let's build something that lasts. It's not about playing small, it's about playing smart. It's knowing when to accelerate and when to recalibrate. It's trusting that enough, when aligned with purpose, creates margin for peace, clarity, and growth. And in a culture that pushes us to chase more for the sake of more, choosing aligned, purposeful restraint is not weakness, it's actually wisdom. Okay, wrath. How about wrath? Wrath lashes out, but patience leans in. Let's be real. Wrath isn't just yelling or throwing things, it can be subtle. It can be stonewalling, cold shoulders, or emotional shutdowns that leave people around you confused and hurt. Wrath is what happens when pain isn't processed, it explodes or it seeps out in silence. But patience creates space. It says, let me understand before I unload. Patience doesn't mean you're okay with everything. It just means you don't let your emotion get hijacked and let it hijack your emotions, hijack your message. And believe me, there's, look, that one really took me some years to learn. Okay. I think about all of those. And then it brings me all the way around to the other one called sloth. All right. And look, sloth, it just keeps waiting while diligence keeps moving. I'm not talking about the animal, the sloth that's on the slow moving animal on the tree, but I'm talking about the habit of delay, of postponing purpose under the mask of I'll do it tomorrow or later. Look, sloth doesn't always look lazy. It can look busy. It's the full calendar with no real progress. Man, listen, you can be slothful and you can be busy. I mean, listen, you can at the end of the day say, whew, I was busy all day, man, but I don't know what I accomplished because we were so busy with busy work. All right. Look, it can be research without execution. It can be planning without movement. But now diligence shows up. There's a scripture that says the diligence soul, it shall be made fat. All right. All right. When it's tired, it still shows up, even when the reward isn't immediately. I talked about delayed gratification. It's the person who says, this matters. I may not feel like it, but I'm doing it anyway. And let me say this, you don't build legacy by accident, you build it with discipline. What are we really talking about today? We're talking about human patterns, patterns that have been around for a century and still show up in the way we chase success, build relationships, and show up for our lives. So let me bring this home. We didn't just walk through a list of church warnings. We walked through a mirror that shows how these age-old patterns still echo in our daily lives. Pride, greed, lust, envy, wrath, gluttony, and sloth. All right? They're not just sins as they're called. They're stories we tell ourselves, stories that either hold us hostage or wake us up. And they're opposites. Those aren't just virtues, they're tools, they're recalibration points. They guide us back to who we really want to be. Because at the end of the day, your legacy won't be built on how perfect you were. It will be built on how often you chose awareness over, I guess, autopilot, virtue over ego, growth over comfort. We don't always choose our starting point, but we do choose our direction. And the direction you choose today, that's what shapes tomorrow. So, hey, look, until the next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those new horizons. We'll see you next time on the Shattered Mindset podcast. Take care, take charge. God bless.